is awesome. Well, won't you guys join us in worship tonight? Let's praise God together.
The same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out, working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will. I count on one thing. The same God that never fails will not fail me now. He won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out, working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will. I choose to praise, glorify, glorify the name of all names. Nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, glorify, glorify the name of all names. Nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name of all names. That nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name of all names. That nothing can stand against. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will.
Your mercy never privilege to come and worship you. I just pray that as we gather here tonight, that you just speak into our hearts and our minds, and that we just focus everything that we have on you. And in your name we pray, amen.
Screen. Can you push it? Now, the red light went off, right? You got to push it again to make it start again.
The red
You know what I'm
light-
saying?
No, it started.
Oh, was it not recording the whole time?
No, I don't know. It's
Hold on, I'm
blinking.
sorry, one sec. Back away so I don't get COVID on you. Oh, it's recording, cool. Oh, okay, sweet, you can sit down. Sorry about that, y'all. I think I've explained this before, but our camera only is willing to record 30 minutes at a time. So you have to reset it, like in between worship and the message, otherwise it just ends like 10 minutes into me talking up here, which would probably be a good thing given how tonight's going so far. Okay, so we are continuing our series, Real Life, and last week we were in life groups, like I said, and I hope you all took the opportunity to share with each other. We kind of threw in there this opportunity to just sort of share your stories with each other, to be honest, to be vulnerable about some of the things that you've gone through and where you're at in your faith journey, and I hope that a few of you took the opportunity to do that. And to share in that space. And if you didn't, that's totally okay. The cool thing is you're here now anyway, and every week we're together, and whether it's in life groups or large group, whatever, is an opportunity to share and to be real with each other, to be honest, to be vulnerable. And so I'm excited for that, for sure. Now, this week, we are continuing on in our series, Real Life. And I thought it was more than appropriate that I wear my real hat as I talk about real life. One of our janitors here, like every time I wear this, he walks up to me and he's like, "Andy, that's a real hat that you're wearing." Thank you, Drew. Yes, I appreciate that. You got me again. But it's good. I own it. I wear it over and over again, so it's my fault, really. But we're continuing on in our series, Real Life. And in order to continue on in our series, Real Life, I think we have to ask ourselves a question. And that is, what is real life? I think it's sort of like a buzzword that people share often. You know, it's like, oh man, like, I just want to be real, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be fake. Like, I'm a real person. I'm like, all right, that's nice. So like, what does that even mean? You know, like does that mean you physically exist, or does that mean like that you're like down to earth? Like I don't know what that means. And so we have to ask ourselves the question, what is real life? And on a more serious note, I think that that's a really tough concept right now. I mean, especially with everything that's going on right now in our world, it feels oftentimes maybe like we're one person online, and we're one person in our physical lives, or we're one person at school, and then we're a different person with our family, and we're a different person with our friends, and we're a different person at church. And so the question kind of becomes, where's the real me in the middle of all that? Where's real life factor in when nothing really feels real at all? When nothing kind of feels real, what does real life even mean? And to do that, obviously, like we do every week, we're going to take a look at what God has to say about it. There's a place I want us to start in the book of John, chapter 10, verse 10. Really, it's the second half of the verse. Jesus is talking, the big man himself, so pay attention, it's real important. And he says this, he's teaching and traveling around. He says, one of the statements he makes is, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. In other words, I've come that people will have real life. I've come that people would have a full life and an abundant life, this incredible experience that no one else can offer you. I've come that you may have life and have it abundantly. And so the simple answer to the question, what is real life, is this. Real life is the life that Jesus offers. Now, I'm sure most of y'all are going to look at me now and go, oh, Andy, that's a very nice Christian answer that you just gave. Like, thank you for that. I'm going to go tell all my friends, real life is life that Jesus offers. And they're going to stare back at me like you all are staring back at me right now. Just like, what in the world are you talking about? That doesn't mean anything. What does that even mean? Well, I think if we're going to say that real life is life that Jesus offers, we have to look at the person who lived it. I mean, if I'm going to offer you something, it has to be something that I've experienced, right? So if I was to come to you all, and I were to say, Aaliyah, I'm going to teach you how to be the best skier that ever done skied, okay? We're going to be doing some abundant skiing, real skiing, skiing to the fullest extent. And you were to look back at me and go, that sounds awesome, Andy. I'm so glad you're going to teach me how to ski. How many times have you gone skiing? And I would say, once. And I fell down a lot. You would look back at me like, you are not teaching me how to ski. Like, I don't even want to watch you ski, you know what I mean? So if we're looking at someone who's offering us real life, the question becomes like, man, like this has to be something that they've experienced. And so if Jesus is offering us abundant life, if he's offering us real life, then maybe we should take a look at the life of Jesus. And maybe we shift the question a little bit. Instead of asking, what is real life, we ask, what does real life look like? What does it actually tangibly look like to live real life? And to do that, there's a couple stories of Jesus' life that I want us to glance at together. The first one is still in the book of John. It's just a couple chapters earlier. It's in John chapter 8. Now, before you get ahead of me and read this, I'll give you the background. There's this group of religious leaders that we've talked about quite a few times here called the Pharisees. And they were kind of like nose in the air snobs. They thought they were better than everybody else. They walked around with like these fancy robes on. They had all these tassels hanging down. And they followed all the rules, and they just thought that they were hot stuff. And they catch this woman who's in the middle of cheating on her husband or cheating with a man who has a wife, like some sort of adultery situation. They catch her in the middle of this, and they grab her and they drag her into the temple where Jesus is, and they throw her down in front of him. And they say like, oh, Jesus, this woman has committed adultery. We caught her in the act. We caught her red-handed. There's no denying it. And the old law, the Old Testament law that we follow, it says that a person who commits adultery is supposed to be stoned. And not like that at all, but like they're supposed to have rocks thrown at them until they die, and that's real serious. So what are we supposed to do? Now, they're not asking this question to be genuine. Like, I hope that that's obvious. They're trying to catch Jesus in a bad situation. Because if Jesus says, well, we have to follow the law, then Jesus is condemning this woman to death, and Jesus was known for being this merciful and kind person, and so that's one situation. But if he denies it, if he says like, oh, well, we shouldn't do that, that's not very nice, then he's disobeying the law. And that would discredit him as someone who's speaking on behalf of God and who is claiming to be the Son of God, and so they're trying to catch him in the middle. And Jesus does the thing that Jesus does, and he responds with a question. He says, and he kind of throws them back into a situation. He says like, all right, sounds good. Whichever one of you has never sinned before, you go ahead and throw the first stone. And so instead of being caught in a situation, he catches them back in a situation, because now they have a decision to make. Either they pick up a stone and start throwing it at these ladies and claim to be perfect, which none of them are, or they walk away. And so one by one, they start to disappear. It says starting with the oldest, the ones that have made the most mistakes, they're like, oh no, I know that's not me, and they scoot out of there. And then the young, arrogant ones are last left, and they're like, yeah, we should probably leave too, And so they leave. And eventually it's just Jesus standing with this woman. And so it says Jesus stood up and said to her, woman, where are they? Hey, where'd all those guys go that were accusing you? Has no one condemned you? And she said, no one, Lord. Jesus said, neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, sin no more. So they attempt to catch him in this situation, and he catches him right back, and he's standing alone with this woman who's made mistakes, who's making bad choices. He says, I don't condemn you. I don't condemn you. He doesn't say, I don't condemn you, now go do it some more. He doesn't tell her to go keep making the same choices. He says, hey, I don't condemn you. You're free. You've been given grace. You can go ahead. In other words, the first thing that we see about Jesus is that Jesus was irresistibly gracious. Jesus was irresistibly gracious. Stand in the midst of a situation where he's got a woman in front of him who absolutely deserves the worst that the law has to offer in this culture, like who has made bad choices and who deserves bad things. He says, I don't condemn you. I love you. You're free to go. Jesus was irresistibly gracious. When I moved out here, I became familiar with a thing that you all call Minnesota nice. As a Detroit boy, I was not familiar with this Minnesota nice thing. I was like, what is Minnesota nice? And it's like, oh, you betcha. You know, like, can I get you a hot dish? You know, like it's just like this super nice culture and no one's confrontational at all. Like, it's like you guys are like the cultural opposite of Boston or New York. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, let's just all smile at each other and like help each other out. Like, you know, like at this minute, like Josiah's dying down here. He's like, yeah, I've lived in that my entire life. Is Minnesota nice? Now, I have to make this statement. This is not Minnesota nice. Okay, like Minnesota nice is not irresistibly gracious, and I'll tell you why. I've learned that there's a dark side to Minnesota nice. There it is! You all are like, oh yeah! Yes, there is! It's called passive aggression. Oh yeah! No, I don't mind. That's fine. You know, like, oh man, like, y'all don't confront anything, but like, it still happens behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Like, some of y'all are looking at each other right now, and I need you to stop it before the conflict breaks out here. But Minnesota, this is not what irresistibly gracious means, okay? Irresistibly gracious is genuine, all the way real. Hey, I love you no matter what. I'm with you. That's irresistibly gracious. But irresistibly gracious only gets us so far. That's not it. There's got to be more to the story. You see, Jesus, in that previous statement, he didn't just say, no, I don't condemn you. He also said, go and sin no more. He had something to say. And so we continue on into another story. These next two are out of the book of Luke, which is another one of the Gospels. Luke chapter 14, pull it on up. One day, so Jesus is wandering around, doing his teaching thing. One Sabbath, when he went to dine at the house of a ruler of the Pharisees. So same dudes that brought this woman before him and were trying to be jerks about it. He's staying at a ruler of these people, like one of their leaders. So, like, let's take it to modern day. He's like at a mega church pastor's house. You know what I mean? Like Andy Stanley, he's hanging out with him. And they're hanging out together, they're having dinner. And these people were watching him very carefully. But he's hanging out at the Pharisee's house. And a situation arises. There's a man there who's sick, but they're on the Sabbath. And you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath in Jewish culture. And so Jesus he heals this man and sends him on his way. And the Pharisees are questioning him, how could you heal them? And Jesus goes on and he tells them a parable. No, go back. Now he told a parable to those who were invited. So Jesus is hanging out with the religious rulers, like the top line religious people, the most schooled in the Bible knowledge, like all of the most religious folks. And he's telling them the truth. He shares with them a parable, which is his version of a sermon, if you will. Goes on next, a few chapters later, so just a little time later, Jesus is wandering around teaching again, and he comes into a city where there's a guy who's a tax collector, a chief tax collector. Now, what a tax collector was in that day was not like the IRS, okay? Like they were not official. They did not have like laws to follow. Like they were basically like the mob that worked on behalf of the Roman government. So essentially, a mob boss, the opposite of a ruler of the Pharisees. And so Jesus sees this guy, and he says, hey, I'm going to come and I'm going to have dinner with you. Like, I'm going to come and be your friend. And all these people are watching this happen. It says, and when they saw it, they all grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. So Jesus goes from spending Sabbath, spending the holy day with a ruler of the Pharisees, with the religious elite, to being a guest of a mob boss, a fraudster, a white-collar criminal, a gangster, a guy who robs from the poor and gives to the rich, like the opposite of Robin Hood. And as they heard these things, he proceeded to tell a parable. And he starts sharing truth with these people. You see, not only was Jesus irresistibly gracious, but he was also unapologetically true. Now, I know unapologetically is a big word. What unapologetically essentially means is no matter what. Like without any like step down from it, without stepping back, Jesus was true no matter what. He was the same person when he was with the rulers of the Pharisees as he was when he was with the gangsters and the fraudsters and these people who were doing all these horrible things. He was the same guy. He was the same Jesus. But I have to ask the question, like, okay, why would this chief tax collector even be interested in hanging out with Jesus? Like, why would this guy be interested in having him in his house? Well, because of what we already saw. In that first story, Jesus is irresistibly gracious. Jesus was irresistibly gracious. And we can see there why Zacchaeus would even be interested. You see, you can skip the next, I think I put the verses back in there, but you can skip to the next one. Irresistible grace gets people interested. It gets people interested. It's a good thing. I mean, how many of you all have like a family member or a friend or a neighbor or someone who just like they might be right a lot of the time, but they just beat you over the head. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, you're doing this wrong, and you're doing this wrong, and you need to fix this, and this is a problem, and man, like you messed up here. And that's all they do, all the time. How many of y'all are inclined to listen to them? Like you're like, man, I just love talking to them about this stuff. Nobody, really? Like no one just loves sitting in that and just like getting hit over the head with stuff over and over again? You're not interested. Well, irresistible grace gets people interested. And how many of you all have a friend that no matter what, like, man, they love on you. Like, you know that every time you're with them, like, they care about you, they want to know how you're doing, they're with you, they're on your team. And do you want to listen to what they have to say about you? Yeah, absolutely. Like, I want to hear what that person has to say about me. Because they're irresistibly gracious. But irresistible grace only gets us so far, right? Because if I go to my friend and I'm like, man, I'm so glad to see you, bro. Like, it's like, yeah, man, what's up? Well, what's going on? And I'm like, I just killed a dude, man, and I'm having a hard day. And he's just like, that's tough, bro. Come, let's hang out. Like, let's just relax and talk about it. I'm sorry to hear that. Like, that's not a good friend. You know what I mean? Like, he just let me kill a dude. He didn't even ask questions. He's like, okay, he probably deserved it. That's not good. Irresistible grace by itself doesn't change anyone's life. And that doesn't get us anywhere. But unapologetic truth does. Unapologetic truth changes people's lives. Truth that never changes, that's consistent, that's honest, that's real, the same again and again, is Jesus being in the ruler's house and sharing the truth, and then being in the mob boss's house and sharing the truth. Jesus wasn't just irresistibly gracious, he was unapologetically true. And so if we're looking for real life, if we're looking for life that looks like Jesus, we see both of these things become a part of our lives. Now, let me be clear. There might be situations where we need to do different things. I'm sure that the parables that Jesus taught in those situations were not the same parables. Those two different groups of people needed to hear different things. But it was the same Jesus. I might act differently at a funeral than I would at a Super Bowl party. I would hope so. Depending on what teams are playing, and you never know. Like, I might be bummed out at a Super Bowl party. But I should probably act differently in those different situations, but I should be the same person. I should have the same character. I should live the same way. I should be the same Andy when I'm up on stage talking in front of a bunch of high school students about Jesus as I should be in traffic when Karen cuts me off. You know, I don't know, I use that example a lot. It's because God is working on driving in my life. Like, that's an area he's loving on me. But it's true. I should be the same Andy right here in this moment as I am in that situation. And I know that, man, there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of situations for us to not want to be the same person. But when we live the same way, when we are unapologetically true, when we take hold of that life, people's lives start to change. I'm going to ask Jason to come on up, because I want to finish talking with y'all about this a little bit. Here's the reality. You can go to the last slide. Real life looks like Jesus. Real life looks like Jesus. Oh, no, that's the last slide, isn't it? What? Hold up now. Did I put the slides in the wrong order? This is awesome. Oh, no, yeah, last slide. There it is. Boom. Real life looks like Jesus. If we're going to answer that question, what does real life look like? Real life looks like the person who came to offer it. Guys, the crazy thing to me about Jesus is that he came to this world as the Son of God to offer us his life so that we could experience real life. We are coming now out of the Easter season where we've been thinking about and reflecting on and focusing on the life that Jesus lived, and specifically the end of his life here on earth, where he came and he gave his life for us so that we could know him. And I know that there are some of us tonight that probably are wondering if this is for us. Most of y'all have probably grown up in church to some extent, but the question becomes, have you actually stepped into real life with Jesus? Last week we read verses out of Romans 10, 9 and 10, where it talks about how all that Jesus requires of us to step into life with him is that we believe that he came and did exactly what he said he would do and gave his life for us so that we could be reunited with God. That's it. And then as we begin to step into relationship with God, we see our lives begin to change. And we begin to embody the life that Jesus lived, that was irresistibly gracious and unapologetically true. When our lives begin to look like that, when we begin to take hold of that for ourselves, incredible things can happen in the lives of the people around us and in our lives too. And so I want to take just a couple minutes to sit in that thought. I want to ask you all to consider, okay, have I actually made a decision to step into real life with Jesus? Is that something that I've done? And if you're not there yet, that's okay. But we want to talk to you about it. If that's something that you're thinking about, wondering about, and wrestling with, then talk to someone about it. Talk to me. Talk to your life group leader. Talk to a friend who's here. And ask yourself that question. Have I stepped into real life with Jesus or not? So Jason's going to sing a little bit for us, and then we're going to go ahead and close.
Yes, I will lift same God that never fails, you won't fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. He's working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh, yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh, yes, I will for all my days. Oh, yes, I will, 'cause I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name of all names. Oh, nothing can stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name of all names. Oh, nothing can stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name of all names. Oh, nothing can stand against, 'cause I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name of all names. Oh, nothing can stand against. Oh, yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh, yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will.
Do you guys pray with me? God, thank you so much that you look down on us with enough love to say, I'm going to go and I'm going to be willing to sacrifice myself so that they can be back in relationship with me. Despite all of our mistakes, all of our issues, you love us that much. So God, I pray for any student who's in this room tonight that doesn't know for sure if they're in relationship with you, that they would be willing to talk about it, that they would be asking that question. God, if there are any students here tonight that want to make that decision and say, man, I want a real life that looks like Jesus. I want to be irresistibly gracious and unapologetically true. I want to walk with Jesus every day. That they would take that step. That they would find a leader or a friend and say, hey, look, I need to make some decisions tonight. And that they would do that. So God, we love you. Thank you for allowing us to be together. It's in your name we pray. Amen.